Poor little girl freezes when she sees a scar identical to hers on a millionaire's face. Sir, I am your daughter? Before we dive into this story, drop a comment below and tell us where you're watching from. Enjoy this incredible journey of fate, connection, and second chances. The grand ballroom sparkled with crystal chandeliers, each light catching on diamond necklaces and gold cufflinks. But in one corner, partially hidden behind a potted palm, a small figure watched the proceedings with wide eyes. 10-year-old Lily Matthews tugged nervously at the sleeve of her second-hand dress. Too big? Too plain? Nothing like the shimmering gowns that floated across the marble floor around her. She reached up unconsciously, fingers finding the crescent-shaped scar beneath her right eye. A habit formed over years of curious stares and whispered questions. Lily, stay close to the kitchen entrance. Her foster mother, Mrs. Porter, appeared with an empty serving tray. And don't touch your face. You know it only draws attention. Lily nodded, dropping her hand. Mrs. Porter wasn't unkind, just practical. After 7 foster homes in 10 years, Lily had learned to recognize the difference. Across the room, standing apart from the clusters of laughing guests, a tall man in an impeccably tailored suit checked his watch. James Harrington, tech innovator, philanthropist, worth over $300 million, and utterly alone. He angled his face slightly away from approaching guests, a practiced move, almost imperceptible unless you were watching for it, just enough to keep the right side of his face in shadow. James nodded mechanically at whatever the board member was saying. Words about quarterly projections and market expansion washed over him. Empty, meaningless. 10 years of building his empire, and for what? The cavernous penthouse he returned to each night? The assistant who scheduled his rare personal appointments? He excused himself and moved toward the less crowded side of the ballroom. May 17th, always the hardest day of the year, the anniversary of the accident, of the scars, both visible and invisible. His hand drifted to the inside pocket of his jacket, where a small photograph was tucked away. His ritual on this day each year. Remember, then try to forget for another year. Lily, trying to avoid a waiter with a full champagne tray, backed up without looking. Small shoulders collided with expensive wool. "I'm sorry, I didn't—" She looked up, an apology ready, but the words died in her throat. There, partially concealed by carefully styled hair, was a scar, a crescent, beneath his right eye, identical to hers, exactly identical. The world seemed to stop. A roaring filled her ears. Fragments of memory, a man's laughing face, the same scar crinkling as he smiled down at her. Fire, screaming, being torn from warm arms. Her small hand moved of its own accord, reaching upward toward his face, toward the scar that mirrored her own. "Sir," she whispered, her voice hardly audible above the gala's chatter, "I think I'm your daughter." James froze, staring down at the small girl with the familiar mark on her face. Something cracked inside his carefully constructed composure. Impossible. They said no one else had survived. Yet there she stood, with his scar, his eyes, and a certainty that shook him to his core. Chapter 2. Fragments of Memory. "What did you say?" James's voice came out harsher than intended, drawing glances from nearby guests. Lily stepped back, suddenly aware of how crazy her words must have sounded. But the scar, the memories that had surfaced, the locket burning against her skin beneath her dress. "I'm sorry," she mumbled, eyes dropping to the floor. Your scar looks like mine." James knelt down, bringing himself to her eye level. His movement surprised even him. Years of maintaining careful distance from others, abandoned in an instant. "What's your name?" he asked, quieter now. Lily Matthews." A pause. "At least that's what they call me at the foster homes." Foster homes. The word hit James like a physical blow. He should walk away, call security, return to his carefully ordered existence. Instead, he heard himself ask, "Why do you think we're related?" Lily's hand went to her neck, pulling out a silver locket from beneath her collar. "I've always had this, and I remember fire, someone carrying me, a man with a scar like yours." James stared at the locket. Delicate silver filigree with a small sapphire set in the center. His throat tightened. "Mr. Harrington?" His assistant, Diane, appeared at his side. "The mayor is waiting to discuss the downtown development project." James stood, reality crashing back. "Right. Of course." "Sir?" Lily's voice was small, uncertain. He reached into his pocket and withdrew a business card. "Take this. Have your—" He hesitated. "Foster mother call my office tomorrow." As he walked away, Diane leaned close. What was that about? Nothing. Everything. Just a confused child. But his hand kept returning to his own scar as he mechanically shook hands with the mayor. Back in his penthouse hours later, James pulled out the old photograph. His wife, Caroline, laughing up at the camera, their infant daughter cradled against her chest. The family he'd lost in the yacht explosion, the family no bodies had ever been recovered for. "It's impossible," he told the empty room. But he was already reaching for his phone, calling his head of security. "Frank? I need you to investigate something, tonight." Morning light filtered through the blinds of the small bedroom Lily shared with two other foster children. She sat cross-legged on her bed, the locket open in her palm. One side empty, the other containing a tiny photo, faded and water-damaged. Only a partial face visible, a woman's smile. Mrs. Porter appeared in the doorway. "Lily, there's a call for you, some assistant to that man you met last night." Lily's heart hammered as she took the cordless phone. "Hello?" Her voice came out as a whisper. "Lily Matthews? This is Diane Crawford, Mr. Harrington's executive assistant. He's requested a meeting with you and your guardian today at 2 p.m. Across town, James stared at the preliminary report on his desk. Lily Matthews, rescued from a burning yacht off the coast of Monaco 10 years ago. Parents unknown. The timing matched, the location matched. But the locket. He needed to see the locket up close. The intercom buzzed. "Sir, your security consultant is here." Frank entered, looking uncomfortable in the sleek office. "Boss, I found something else. The adoption records were sealed by high-level government interference. Someone powerful didn't want this child found." James's hands curled into fists. "The same someone who told me my family was dead? Who arranged the explosion?" "Possibly. There were business rivals who stood to gain significantly from your distraction with grief." The office suddenly felt too small. The paintings on the wall, expensive, meaningless, closed in around him. 10 years of believing a lie while his daughter bounced between foster homes. If she was his daughter, the silver locket would confirm it. He'd given one to Caroline on their first anniversary. Custom made. One of a kind. At exactly 2 p.m., Lily entered his office, clutching Mrs. Porter's hand. Her eyes widened at the floor-to-ceiling windows, the view of the city sprawling below. "Thank you for coming," James said formally, unable to take his eyes off her face. The scar, his scar. "Mr. Harrington has some questions about Lily's background," Diane explained to Mrs. Porter. "Perhaps we could get you some coffee while they speak." Once alone, James gestured to the sofa. "May I see your locket?" Lily removed it carefully, placing it in his outstretched palm. Their fingers brushed. A connection. Electric. Terrifying. James examined the silver filigree, turning it over to find the tiny engraved initials on the back. C.W.H. Carolyn Wilson, Harrington. His vision blurred. "Where did you get this?" "I've always had it," Lily said simply. "The rescue workers said it was clutched in my hand when they found me. I never take it off." Something inside James cracked open, a dam breaking after a decade of carefully constructed walls. "Lily," he said, his voice rough with emotion, I think you might be right about who you are." Rain pounded against the windows of James's office as he paced, phone pressed to his ear. 3 days since meeting Lily. 3 days of relentless investigation. "I don't care about jurisdiction," he snapped. "I want every document related to the yacht explosion, and I want them now." Across town, Lily sat in the social worker's office, watching the woman shuffle papers with a worried expression. "I'm sorry, Lily, but the Porters have given notice. Their eldest is returning from college, and they need your room." Another move, another home, just when she'd found a possible connection to her past. "When?" Lily asked, fingers automatically finding her scar. "End of the week, but I've found a nice placement in Westfield. It's a bit far, but—" The office door opened. James Harrington stood there, rain dripping from his expensive coat. "I need to speak with Lily. Alone." The social worker straightened. "Mr. Harrington, while I appreciate your interest in Lily's case, there are protocols—" "I've submitted a formal request for custody evaluation," he interrupted. "My lawyers filed the paperwork this morning." Lily's heart stuttered. Custody. 10 minutes later, they sat in James's car, the rain creating a private cocoon around them. "I found records," he said without preamble. "The yacht explosion wasn't an accident, and the man who orchestrated it was Victor Reeves." "Who's that?" "My former business partner, the man who took control of my company while I was grieving." James's hands tightened on the steering wheel. "And the man who's been monitoring your foster placements to keep you hidden from me." Lily struggled to process this. But why? Power. Money. A muscle in James's jaw twitched. With me distracted by loss, he implemented patents I'd been hesitant about, military applications. "How can you be sure I'm really—" She couldn't finish the sentence. Hoping too much had always led to disappointment. James reached into his pocket and withdrew a folded paper. "DNA test results. 99.97% probability that I'm your biological father." The world seemed to tilt on its axis. "What happens now?" she whispered. "Now," James said, turning to face her fully, "we fight to become a family again." For the first time, Lily noticed tears in the corners of his eyes, gathering near the edges of his scar, just like hers. The courthouse loomed, imposing and gray. Lily tugged at the collar of her new dress, the first piece of clothing ever purchased specifically for her. James had sent Diane shopping when he'd learned about the emergency hearing. "Remember," James said quietly as they climbed the steps, "let my lawyers do the talking. Reeves has powerful connections in the family court system." Inside, the hearing room felt airless. A judge peered down at them over half-moon glasses. Representatives from the foster system shuffled papers nervously. And in the corner, a sharp-featured man in an expensive suit watched with calculating eyes. Victor Reeves, the man who had stolen 10 years from them both. "Mr. Harrington," the judge began, "while the DNA evidence is compelling, there are concerns about the suddenness of this custody request. Ms. Matthews has been in the system for a decade. A transition period is standard protocol." James's lawyer stood. "Your Honor, we have evidence that Mr. Harrington's daughter was deliberately kept from him through manipulation of records and systematic interference with the foster placement process." Reeves shifted in his seat, but remained silent. As adults argued over her fate, Lily's attention drifted to a painting on the wall. A family. Together. Whole. Her hand found the locket beneath her dress. "Additionally," James's lawyer continued, "we've uncovered offshore accounts linking Mr. Reeves to payments made to officials who handled the original accident investigation." The judge's expression darkened. "These are serious allegations that exceed the scope of this hearing. Hours of testimony, questions about James's suitability as a parent, his work schedule, his home environment. Each answer carefully considered, as if he'd been preparing for this moment his entire life." When Lily was asked to speak, her voice came out smaller than intended. I've spent my whole life wondering where I belonged." Her fingers traced the scar beneath her eye. "I think maybe it's with him." Outside, after the judge granted temporary custody, pending home evaluation, Reeves approached them. His smile never reached his eyes. "Touching reunion, James. But are you really prepared to be a father? You can hardly maintain a personal relationship for more than a few months." James positioned himself between Reeves and Lily. "Stay away from my daughter. This isn't over." "No," Reeves agreed pleasantly. "It certainly isn't." That night, in the guest room of James's penthouse, bigger than any bedroom Lily had ever had, she stood by the window overlooking the city lights. "Does it hurt?" James asked from the doorway, gesturing to his own scar. "Not anymore," Lily answered. "Does yours?" "Every day for 10 years, he said quietly. "But not today." James stared at the pink backpack on his kitchen counter, feeling wildly out of his depth. Diane had helped gather Lily's belongings from the Porter's house. Everything she owned in the world fit into one small bag. "I have meetings until 3, he told Lily over breakfast. "Cereal, the only kid-friendly food in his minimalist kitchen. Diane will stay with you, and we can go shopping afterward for things you need." Lily nodded, not touching her cereal. "Do I call you James? Or Mr. Harrington?" The question caught him off guard. Whatever you're comfortable with." "What did I call you? Before?" James swallowed hard. "Daddy. You called me Daddy." The word hung between them, heavy with lost time. When James returned that afternoon, he found Lily sitting cross-legged on the floor of his home office, looking at the single-framed photo on his desk. "That's your mother," he said, setting down his briefcase. "Carolyn." Lily studied the woman's face. "She's beautiful. Do I look like her?" "Your smile. When you actually smile." James sat on the floor beside her, something he couldn't remember doing in years. "And you have her kindness. I saw it in how you thanked the doorman this morning." "I don't remember her at all," Lily admitted, a catch in her voice. "She would sing to you every night," James said, surprising himself with the memory. "Some French lullaby her grandmother taught her. Even when you were tiny, you would stop crying the moment she started singing." "What happened to her, really?" James closed his eyes briefly. "The investigation is still ongoing, but it appears she got you into a life raft before the yacht exploded. She didn't make it out herself." Tears spilled down Lily's cheeks, tracing the outline of her scar. Without thinking, James reached out, his thumb gently wiping them away. "I've been so angry for so long," he confessed. "Building walls, building an empire. None of it mattered." "I've been drawing pictures of you," Lily whispered. "In every foster home, I'd hide them under my mattress. A dad with a scar like mine who would come find me someday." Something inside James broke wide open. 10 years of grief and rage and emptiness crumbled away, replaced by a feeling he'd forgotten existed. Love. Simple, overwhelming love. He held out his arms, uncertain if she would come to him. For a moment, Lily hesitated. Too many adults who'd promised permanence but delivered only temporary care. Then she moved into his embrace. Small, fragile, his daughter. "I'll never disappear again," he promised, his voice raw. "Never." "This room is bigger than Mrs. Porter's whole house," Lily said, turning in circles in the newly decorated bedroom. 4 weeks had passed. 4 weeks of adjusting to each other, of learning how to be father and daughter rather than strangers connected by DNA and matching scars. James leaned against the doorframe, watching her explore the space the designer had created. Lavender walls, a canopy bed, bookshelves filled with titles Diane had researched as appropriate for 10-year-old girls. "Is it too much?" he asked, suddenly worried. His instinct had been to give her everything, to make up for years of lack all at once. Lily ran her hand over the quilted bedspread. "It's nice, but... She looked up, vulnerability naked on her face. "What if I do something wrong and have to leave?" The question hit him like a physical blow. "Lily, this is your home now, permanently. The final adoption hearing is just a formality." Later that evening, after a dinner where Lily had barely touched her food, James found her sitting on the balcony, staring at the night sky. "Limited stars in the city," he commented, taking the chair beside her. "I grew up in the countryside. You could see the entire Milky Way on clear nights." "My third foster home was on a farm," Lily offered. "I liked the stars there." "We could look at property outside the city," James suggested. "For weekends." Lily looked at him, really looked at him. "You'd leave the city? Your company?" "Lily," James said carefully, "I've restructured my entire executive team in the past month. I now work remotely 3 days a week. The company will survive without my physical presence." "Because of me?" "Because you showed me what actually matters." He hesitated, then added, "I've been a successful businessman. I haven't necessarily been a good man. I'd like to be both, for you." Lily's hand crept across the space between them, small fingers tentatively touching his. "I get scared sometimes that this isn't real." "Me too." He turned his hand, engulfing hers. "We're both learning." "The other kids at school ask about my scar," she said suddenly. "And about you. They've seen your picture in magazines." James touched his own scar reflexively. "What do you tell them?" "That it's how we found each other again. A smile, small but real. That's what I tell them." In that moment, the matching scars felt less like remnants of tragedy and more like a map that had led them back to each other. "This room is bigger than Mrs. Porter's whole house," Lily said, turning in circles in the newly decorated bedroom. 4 weeks had passed, 4 weeks of adjusting to each other, of learning how to be father and daughter rather than strangers connected by DNA and matching scars. James leaned against the doorframe, watching her explore the space the designer had created. Lavender walls, a canopy bed, bookshelves filled with titles Diane had researched as appropriate for 10-year-old girls. "Is it too much?" he asked, suddenly worried. His instinct had been to give her everything, to make up for years of lack all at once. Lily ran her hand over the quilted bedspread. "It's nice, but..." She looked up, vulnerability naked on her face. "What if I do something wrong and have to leave?" The question hit him like a physical blow. "Lily, this is your home now, permanently. The final adoption hearing is just a formality." Later that evening, after a dinner where Lily had barely touched her food, James found her sitting on the balcony, staring at the night sky. "Limited stars in the city," he commented, taking the chair beside her. "I grew up in the countryside. You could see the entire Milky Way on clear nights." "My third foster home was on a farm," Lily offered. "I liked the stars there." "We could look at property outside the city," James suggested. "For weekends." Lily looked at him, really looked at him. "You'd leave the city? Your company?" "Lily," James said carefully, "I've restructured my entire executive team in the past month. I now work remotely 3 days a week. The company will survive without my physical presence." "Because of me?" "Because you showed me what actually matters." He hesitated, then added, "I've been a successful businessman. I haven't necessarily been a good man. I'd like to be both, for you." Lily's hand crept across the space between them, small fingers tentatively touching his. "I get scared sometimes that this isn't real." "Me too." He turned his hand, engulfing hers. "We're both learning." "The other kids at school ask about my scar," she said suddenly. "And about you. They've seen your picture in magazines." James touched his own scar reflexively. "What do you tell them?" "That it's how we found each other again. A smile, small but real. That's what I tell them." In that moment, the matching scars felt less like remnants of tragedy and more like a map that had led them back to each other. 6 months later, James adjusted his tie, checking his reflection in the hallway mirror. The scar, once hidden by careful grooming and strategic lighting in photographs, now plainly visible. He'd stopped trying to conceal it the day Lily had moved in permanently. "Ready?" he called down the hall. "Coming." Lily emerged from her room wearing a blue dress that matched her eyes, Caroline's eyes. Her hair, longer now, was pulled back with a silver clip, her scar as visible as his own. "You look beautiful," he said, meaning it. Today marked 6 months since the final adoption decree. 6 months of building a life together, of parent-teacher conferences and bedtime stories and learning each other's favorite foods, of nightmares where Lily woke up crying for a mother she couldn't remember, and fears that Reeves, now awaiting trial, might still try to separate them. 6 months of healing. But only the beginning. They took the elevator down to the waiting car. Today's destination was the small memorial garden James had commissioned in Caroline's memory. "Do you think she'd be happy?" Lily asked as they drove, the silver locket, now containing photos of all 3 of them, past and present, clutched in her hand. "About us finding each other?" "She moved heaven and earth to save you," James answered, his voice thick with emotion. "Everything else, her finding a way to get you to that life raft, the locket she made sure stayed with you, it was all so we could be here today." The memorial garden was private, sheltered by willows and centered around a small fountain. James had never brought anyone here before. This sacred space had been his alone in his grief. But now, watching Lily place flowers beside the simple stone bearing Caroline's name, he couldn't imagine having come here without her. "I wish I remembered her," Lily said softly. "You carry her with you," James replied, "in how you tilt your head when you're curious, in how fiercely you protect your friends, in 1,000 ways neither of us even realizes." James knelt beside the stone, tracing the engraved name with his fingertips. "We found each other, Caroline. You made sure of it." After a moment of silence, James said, "I've been thinking about making some changes." Lily looked up. "What kind of changes?" "I've spent 10 years living in the city, surrounded by glass and concrete, but that was never the plan." He gestured around the garden. "Caroline and I always talked about having a place in the country, somewhere with trees and space, for you to grow up in." "You want to move?" Lily's voice held a note of uncertainty. "Not entirely," James clarified quickly, "but maybe a weekend home, somewhere we could go to escape, to be a family away from business meetings and skyscrapers." The idea hung between them, new and tentative. "I'd like trees," Lily said finally, "and maybe a pond for swimming in summer." James smiled, feeling something shift inside him. This wasn't just about reconnecting with his past anymore. It was about building a future together. As they walked through the public park beyond the private garden, father and daughter with their matching scars catching the afternoon sunlight, James found himself thinking about what else might have been hidden from them. What other connections severed by Reeves's machinations? Caroline's family, records he hadn't yet uncovered. The investigation wasn't over. "Dad?" Lily said, the words still new and precious between them. "I'm glad we're both a little broken in the same way." James looked down at his daughter, this miracle he'd been given a second chance to love, and pushed aside thoughts of the past for now. "The Japanese have a practice called kintsugi," he told her. "They repair broken pottery with gold, believing that something becomes more beautiful for having been broken and mended." Lily smiled up at him, her scar crinkling just like his own. "Like us?" "Like us," James agreed, taking her hand as they walked toward their future together. "And our story is just beginning." The autumn leaves crunched beneath their feet as James and Lily walked the grounds of their new weekend home. The sprawling country property, just an hour outside the city, had become their sanctuary over the past 3 months. "What about this spot?" Lily pointed to a clearing near a small pond, her breath visible in the crisp morning air. James surveyed the area, mentally placing the structure they'd been discussing. "Perfect for your treehouse," Good sturdy oak to support it. Our treehouse, Lily corrected, bumping her shoulder against his arm. You promised you'd help design it. So I did. James smiled, the scar beneath his eye crinkling. A year ago, he would have scoffed at the idea of spending weekends sketching treehouse plans instead of reviewing contracts. Now he couldn't imagine anything more important. Back at the main house, a rambling farmhouse with wide porches and sun-filled rooms, James watched Lily arranging photos on the mantelpiece, their growing collection, new memories being made alongside the precious few salvaged from before. Ms. Rivera called today, he said casually, referring to Lily's therapist. She thinks you're making excellent progress. Lily nodded, carefully positioning a frame containing a picture from last week's school play. I haven't had the nightmare in almost a month now. The nightmare? Always the same. Fire and separation and foster homes blending into an endless cycle of loss. James still woke sometimes to her cries, rushing to her room to reassure her that he was still there, that he would always be there. She also thinks, James continued, choosing his words carefully, that it might be time to visit your last foster home, for closure. Lily's hand stilled on the photograph. The Porters? Only if you want to. No pressure. She was quiet for a long moment, her fingers tracing the edge of the frame. They weren't bad people, just temporary. Most people in life are temporary, James said gently, but not family, not us. A tentative smile broke across her face. Can we bring them something? Mrs. Porter likes flowers, yellow ones. James felt a surge of pride at her compassion. This child, his child, with her capacity for forgiveness despite everything she'd endured. Yellow flowers it is, he agreed, making a mental note to have Diane arrange the visit. Another step in their healing journey. Together. The courtroom fell silent as Victor Reeves was led in, handcuffed and wearing a prison jumpsuit instead of his usual tailored suits. The federal case against him had moved swiftly after key witnesses came forward. James sat rigidly in the gallery, Diane beside him. He'd debated whether to attend, but needed to see justice served with his own eyes. Lily was safely at school, unaware of today's hearing. All rise, the bailiff called as the judge entered. Reeves turned, scanning the courtroom until his gaze locked with James. No remorse showed in those cold eyes. Only calculation, even now. The proceedings moved quickly. A review of new evidence, witness statements confirming Reeves had orchestrated not only the yacht explosion, but the subsequent cover-up regarding Lily's survival. 10 years, James whispered to Diane as they exited the courthouse afterward. He stole 10 years from us. But he couldn't take your future, she reminded him, her expression uncharacteristically gentle. After 15 years as his assistant, Diane had seen the profound change in James since Lily's return. That's the real victory. That evening, as James helped Lily with her science project at the dining table, his phone buzzed with a text from his lead investigator. Found her, Caroline's mother, living in a nursing home in Geneva. James's breath caught. Caroline's mother, Lily's grandmother, who they'd been told had died years ago. Another lie in Reeves's web of deception. Dad, what's wrong? Lily looked up from her solar system model, concern etching her young face. James set down his phone, mind racing. Another piece of family, another connection Lily deserved to have. Nothing's wrong, he assured her, but I think we might need to plan a trip to Switzerland soon. There's someone very special I think you should meet. Who? Lily asked, her curiosity piqued. James reached across the table, gently taking her hand. Your grandmother, your mother's mother. Lily's eyes widened, the solar system forgotten. She's alive? Really alive? Really alive, James confirmed, his throat tight with emotion. And I bet she has a lifetime of stories about your mother to share with you. That night, after Lily had fallen asleep clutching her locket with newfound excitement, James sat in his study reviewing old photos. Family connections once severed now being restored one by one, the healing extending beyond just the two of them. He touched his scar thoughtfully. Once a reminder of all he'd lost, now a symbol of everything found. The Geneva sunshine filtered through the windows of the elegant nursing home, warming the sitting room where Lily perched nervously on the edge of a chair. James stood behind her, his hands resting supportively on her shoulders. "Elle arrive," the nurse said softly before stepping out. Moments later, the door opened again. An elderly woman in a wheelchair appeared, her silver hair neatly styled, her posture still regal despite her advanced years. Her eyes, the same bright blue as Lily's, as Caroline's, widened as she took in the visitors. "Mon Dieu," she whispered, one trembling hand reaching out. "Les yeux de Caroline." James stepped forward. "Madame Beaumont, thank you for seeing us." "James." The woman's voice was thick with emotion. "They told me you all died. All of you gone." "A deception," James explained gently. "One we've only recently uncovered." Madame Beaumont's gaze shifted to Lily, drinking in every detail of her granddaughter's face. "Come closer, child." Lily approached slowly, stopping beside the wheelchair. The old woman reached up, her fingers hovering near Lily's scar. "Just like your father's," she murmured. "From the accident, Non?" Lily nodded, finding her voice. "I'm Lily." "Elise," the woman replied. "Your grandmother, though I had a special name once. Do you know what your mother called me?" Lily shook her head. "Grand-mère Papillon, Grandmother Butterfly." A smile transformed her face, years falling away. "Because I could never stay in one place for too long." "Until now," James observed quietly. "Until I thought I had nothing to flutter toward anymore." Elise took Lily's hand in both of hers. "But here you are, mon petit miracle." Over the next 2 hours, Elise shared stories of Caroline, her childhood in France, her passion for painting, her stubbornness that matched James's own. Lily absorbed every word, occasionally touching her locket as if connecting these new stories to the precious few she already possessed. When it was time to leave, promising to return the next day, Elise pressed something into Lily's palm, a small butterfly brooch, sapphires forming the wings. "It was your mother's," she explained. "Now it belongs with you." Outside, as they walked through the manicured gardens toward their waiting car, Lily was thoughtfully quiet. "What are you thinking?" James asked. "That I have a family," she answered simply. "A real family. You and Grand-mère Papillon and memories of Mom." James stopped walking, turning to face his daughter fully. The sunlight caught on her scar, identical to his own, the mark that had reunited them after a decade apart. "You know," he said, "when I first saw you at that gala, I thought my past had come back to haunt me. Instead, it came back to heal me." Lily smiled up at him, no longer the uncertain foster child she'd been a year ago. "Me too." As they continued walking, Lily slipped her hand into his. Father and daughter. Two pieces of a family puzzle that had seemed forever broken, now finding wholeness again. The silver locket bounced gently against Lily's chest with each step, carrying old memories and new beginnings. And the butterfly brooch sparkled in the sunshine, a symbol of transformation complete. Jamendais.